Hi, everybody, and happy Easter. I'm Jen, and you are watching Pay Down Debt Solutions channel. And on this channel, we teach all about velocity banking. We teach how to overcome traditional banking and the banks and win with your finances. So today, we're going to talk about the top 3 lies that the banks tell you. And we're also going to talk about what we do as velocity bankers to overcome these lies and how we then win against the banks, right? What we then do with those lies and how we change our position, right? Because we know that if we bank just a little bit differently, we are going to change our trajectory and we are not going to be payment poor anymore. I'm going to actually cover all of these, quite ironically, with a student situation that we had, a student scenario with Kelly and Jason here, who sold a business and had some savings that they were wondering what they should do with. As you can see, they have some cash flow, but things are pretty tight, okay, pretty tight. And I also want to let you guys know, because I know you're looking at that income and you're thinking, how in the world are people so tight when they have an income like that? And again, you guys, it doesn't matter what your income is. We are all taught, we are all brought up in the traditional banking system. And you take on payments because somebody told you you could, or you calculate it based on what the traditional banks tell you, and you think that you can afford these payments. And at the end of the day, when you look at everything, what happens is you end up payment strapped, payment poor, and life happens, right? When life happens, things get rough sometimes, and then the snowball starts to happen. Debt starts to creep up. You can handle it only in so many ways. You can get a new job, right? Or you can get another job to handle those finances, or maybe you get a windfall, right? Or you have to go out and get a loan. And we don't teach loans on this channel. We teach lines of credit. Remember, always a line, never a loan, okay? And so that's what happens, right? When life lifes you, when life gets in the way, right? When life happens to you, what are you going to do about it? Well, those of you that are here and those of you that are already velocity bankers understand how you then overcome this. But we're going to talk about those top lies that banks tell you. And all of you out there that are not currently velocity banking and are wondering what velocity banking is all about, this is a good video for you because you're going to learn how to handle situations such as Jason and Kelly here, okay? All right, so the top 3 lies that the banks tell you, all right? And you're going to see this and you're going to say, yes, I've heard this my entire life. And I know I have to keep money in savings, right? I have to keep money on deposit with the bank because if something happens, where am I going to go and what am I going to do? If I lose my job, somebody gets sick and we owe a bunch of money, what do we do about it? How do we pay our bills, okay? So number 1, right? You need to keep 3 to 6 months of savings in your account to cover your bills. Well, I know that all the gurus out there and your banks are going to tell you that you need to keep 3 to 6 months in your savings account or in some kind of account on deposit with the bank. It has to be on deposit, right? You're going to keep it on deposit with the bank because if something happens, you need a place to go, all right? That's what they're going to tell you. Now, those of us that know about velocity banking have a different strategy and we do something different. We use lines of credit instead. Lines of credit that sit out there for these oh shiznit moments in our life when we don't have any options. And I know you're sitting out there thinking, yeah, but a line of credit, then you're borrowing from it and then you got to pay it back. And if you had it in savings, you would just pay for it. Well, perhaps that's perhaps one way to look at it, but we look at it a little bit differently. And I'm going to explain that in just a few. All right. So the number 2 lie that these banks are going to tell you are that refinancing to lower your interest rate or drop your payment is smart, right? So if you're sitting at a higher interest rate and when rates drop, what happens? All the loan officers out there and their minions that help them get their loans, right, go out there and they start hammering those phones and they're going to start calling you up. And what's really funny is the last video that I did, as I was finishing my calculations for you, I got a phone call from my own mortgage company, right? And what they wanted was me to go ahead and refinance my mortgage so I could lower my payment and maybe make things easier on myself. And I just laughed. And I thanked her very much. And I said, I appreciate you. I know you have a job to do, and that's great, but that is not how I do my banking, okay? So I had a good laugh over that. Anyway, we don't refinance our loans, our mortgages ever, okay? We don't do that. And I'm going to show you why today, okay? And it actually comes up in this scenario here. refinancing is probably one of the worst things you can do because you don't want to reset the clock on that mortgage, all right? And what happens is after about 3 to 4 years into your mortgage, that's when the phone calls start happening, all right? That's when the phone calls start happening, and that's when you're going to see these people coming after you, these loan officers, to refinance your mortgage because it is the most advantageous point in time for these people because they know that you probably have gotten into more debt because statistics show that people who refinance are refinancing because a lot of times they need to lower payments because they are in debt, okay? And so about 3 years, 4 years in, you've built up a little bit of equity, and and if the market has changed some, and maybe your home value has gone up, then they're going to take advantage of it, and they're going to tell you how they're going to do you such a big favor by giving you cash out to do a refinance, right? Or drop your rate or lower your payment. So that all sounds well and good until you look at it on paper and realize what's happening. You are resetting the clock on your mortgage, and the interest that you have paid for those 3 to 4 years, you now throw right out the window. And I can tell you this right now, that when you have a mortgage, a mortgage is amortized, okay? So what does amortized mean? Amortized means that you take a dollar amount, you take a loan amount, okay? And they're going to split it up so that all the payments are even, but they're going to front end load the interest that you're going to pay in the first half of that loan that you get. It's going to be the highest interest you'll ever pay, and at the lower end of that mortgage, the interest goes down, right? So the relationship is inverse with the payment amount, right? I'm sorry, the balance amount, because what happens is the amount you're putting to principal in the very beginning of your mortgage is way less than the amount that's going to interest. So the banks are getting their money first because they know that you're going to refinance in about 3 to 4 years, if not at least in 7 years. Okay, so they know you're going to do that. Why? Because they study this, they know, they're smart, and they know how to make money. Okay, can't fault them for that. I can't, but I can fault them for being predatory and not helping you get out of debt. Okay, so what happens is then your balance your principal payment is less at the beginning of that loan, and your interest is much higher. Okay, same payment amount all the way through that mortgage, right? Same payment amount all the way through, but the principal amount that you're paying is probably a third of what that interest is. And that to me is disgusting because they know what's going to happen. They know you're going to refinance, and they know that they can get their money, and they're going to reset the clock, and they're going to get it all over again. So I'm going to show you guys how not to do that, and how we help Jason and Kelly not do what they were going to do, was to take out a cash out refi. Okay, so this is something that Velocity bankers know better. We don't do this. We learned a different way because we know how to handle that mortgage at the end of the day and cut time off of that mortgage and cut interest, right? Time is money. You guys know that. I say it all the time. Now, number 3, it makes sense to get a home equity loan or signature loan to pay off high interest rate credit cards. Let's do that, you guys. Let's all go out and get a home equity loan or some kind of a personal loan, right? And we're going to pay off those high interest rate credit cards that are just killing us. That's what the banks are telling you to do, right? If you guys have a lot of credit card debt out there, revolving lines of credit with high interest rates, such as these guys did, then the banks are going to tell you to go ahead and get a home equity loan because the interest rate is low, and you can consolidate all of that, and you can drop your payment, and life will be good, right? Wrong, okay? That is wrong. And I'm going to tell you why that's wrong. That's wrong because, again, it's amortized, right? All loans are amortized this way. Lines of credit are not. When you're smart and when you learn Velocity banking, what you're going to do instead of getting that home equity loan is you're going to get a home equity line of credit, or you're going to get a signature line of credit to handle those debts instead. Because we know, and this is the magic, right? We know that when you put your income in and you run your expenses out of a line of credit, you free up cash flow for yourself, which then helps pay down those debts. That is the magic of Velocity banking. And we do this through simple interest because lines of credit are calculated based on an average daily balance, simple interest here. All right. So what that means is the higher your loan is, right, the more interest you're going to pay. The lower your loan is, the less interest you're going to pay. The difference between that and the amortized loan is your payment remains the same, okay? It always remains the same in a loan. But in these lines of credit, as your balance comes down, your payment comes down. And your interest also comes down. Whereas in the amortized mortgage, your balance, the amount that you're paying towards your principal, right, is going to be much less in the beginning. You're paying more interest at the end, right? I'm sorry, you're paying more interest in the beginning, less interest at the end. But with lines of credit, they're kind of equal, right? They're both coming down at the same time, both interest and principal. And what happens when you put your income in, you are dropping your balance significantly, okay? So if I had a home equity line, let's say, of 50,000, right? Let's say it's 50,000. And my income is, let's say, 9,000. So what did I just do? What did I just do here? This was my balance, right? My new balance, sorry, squeezing it in there for you guys. So my new balance is $41,000 in an instant, right? So my interest, the high interest that I would have paid would be on the 50,000. The low interest that I would pay is on 41,000, okay? So my interest is going to drop significantly in a moment, just like that, because I'm putting my income in. Now, we also have to run our expenses out. So what happens is we have to average this. We do an average daily balance. And that's what I'm going to get into for you with this loan here. I'm sorry, with this student scenario here. And we're going to go over that, right? So this is how we win when we're using velocity banking. It is that simple interest. It is the average daily balance, and it is learning how to run your finances differently to free up cash flow, right? Free up that cash flow and let that cash flow then work its way into that line of credit and help you pay down your line with the freed up cash flow, okay? Now, I know that sounds really confusing. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but as you see me work these down, you're going to understand it in about a minute. So I'm going to then introduce to you Kelly and Jason and their scenario, okay? So we have then talked about the 3 lies that banks tell you, all right? What are those 3 lies? Let's recap that. It is you need 3 to 6 months of savings in your account to cover your bills, right? You need that. Or do you, right? Because if we have a home equity line of credit for $50,000, yet the limit on that line of credit is $70,000, we have a pseudo savings account, don't we? That $20,000 between the 50 that you owe on it and the 70 that is available to you is 𝐲𝐶 money, right? It's 𝐲𝐶 money, so you don't have to worry about the 3 to 6 months of money sitting in your account at 0.01% earning nothing when you have debts that you can be using that money to work down your debt, okay? That is what we don't do when we bank when we're velocity bankers, because we know the secret is the lines of credit. Now, 2, refinancing to lower your interest rate is smart, right? It's smart to do that. Now, these guys were actually looking at doing that, not because of the interest rate necessarily, okay, dropping the interest rate, but because they were going to take cash out and pay down their debts, because they figured, okay, we got to get rid of this debt. So if we do a cash out refi, throw it on our mortgage, we can then pay off our debts and we'll be in a better place. We can breathe and we can move forward, okay? Now, the problem with that, even if they know velocity banking, is again, you're resetting that clock. And the interest that you've paid, you've just tossed it out the window and now it means nothing. So you've literally thrown it out the window, okay? So that is what we're going to cover with these guys, because they learned a different way. They came to us, we discussed their options, and now they realized that they need to do something different. And then 3, it makes sense to get a 𝐻 loan or a signature loan to pay off high interest rate credit cards. Well, we don't do loans, we do lines of credit. And again, you're about to see why. It's that magic of the income in, the expenses out, and dropping that interest. Remember, magic, monthly adding gentle interest charges. Gentle because we start with one balance, we put our income in, drop our balance immediately, and those interest charges become much more gentle than they were at the very top end of that loan amount, okay? So that is the magic of velocity banking. All right, so how do how pay down velocity bankers overcome these lies? Well, number one, lines of credit, right? Lines of credit. Number two, handling this here, right? Refinancing. You chunk down payments to principal and balance using those lines of credit. All right. So what happens is you guys get yourself out of debt, right? You get yourself out of debt, then you're going to use those lines of credit to put chunks onto your mortgage to pay it down, right? And as you do that, you then velocity bank your way to getting that line of credit replenished, right? So that you can use it again to chunk down on your mortgage. And this saves you an incredible amount of interest over time. All right. And I know it sounds, inconceivable, right? When you're looking at it saying, yeah, but how am I going to use a loan to pay off another loan? And how does that work for me? Well, it works again through magic, the magic of the gentle interest charges on that home equity line of credit that you'll be using. Because when you free up cash flow and you have a bunch of cash flow because you've paid off these debts now and that is free for you, you then chunk down your mortgage and your monthly paying off that line of credit through your income in, running your expenses out, and dropping interest charges. So we'll see that in a second. And then 3, never alone, always align, right? Never alone, because the banks are going to tell you that you need to get a loan. They're going to tell you to get that home equity loan or get that personal loan because the interest is less and you're going to save more money, right? That's what they're going to tell you. But you now know better. And if you don't know better, you're going to learn better. All right. So let's get into our students here, Kelly and Jason. Let's talk about what they had going on. Now, these were really wonderful people. I had an absolute blast with them. Dan had a blast with them. And they were in a predicament. They knew they needed to do something different. They were about to do a cash out refi when they came across our channel and started learning a little bit, but they just weren't sure how to execute. So they gave us their worksheets and they wanted us to help them out. So we did, okay? Now, Kelly and Jason have an income of $9,300. It's a significant income, isn't it? It is. I'll give them that. But again, you guys, whether you're sitting at $9,300 as monthly income or $2,200 as monthly income, you feel strapped when you have payments like this and when you're giving all of your money away to the bank because they're being predatory and not helping you learn a different way, okay? So don't be ignorant, which is uneducated. We're going to educate you, right? You're going to be a learned person now in finances because you're going to do this through velocity banking and just a little bit different than everybody else. All right. So Kelly and Jason, they sold a business they were struggling with it. Okay. So the business that they were struggling with, somebody bought it. They're going to, do a bunch of stuff to help the business out so they can wipe their hands clean of this and they can get out of the debts that they incurred to try to get this business going. Okay. So they just were struggling to get it going, sold it. Kudos to them for, knowing when to quit, right? There's part of that too, is when you guys have a business, you got to know when to quit. And there is a time when you have to quit on it, okay? And doesn't mean you don't start something else or try something else. You just need to know when enough is enough, all right? So these guys sold their business. They had $56,186 in savings, okay? And they were, they wanted to keep this money in savings. They wanted to hold on to it, right? I told you guys about Dan and I doing the same thing, right? We did the exact same thing that Kelly and Jason were doing. We really, really wanted to hang on to our money, and we couldn't at the end of the day because it doesn't make sense when you look at what your savings account is earning you, okay? So what that savings is earning them to hold on to it, to keep money, shiznit money around, to handle their bills, right? Because 6 months, think about it. If your expenses are $9,000, that's about 6 months, maybe a hair more, but that's really about what it is. That's a lot of money that the banks can then loan to other people because you're keeping it on deposit with them, right? Wrong. Let's not do that. When we're in debt, we're going to take care of our debt, get ourselves out, and be smart. All right. So $56,000, 186 in savings, income $9,300, expenses $9,012, cash flow is at $288. Somebody goes to the dentist and something happens in the mouth, right? That's gone. Okay. You have your daughter goes to a horse show like mine did, right? And it's $370 to go to that horse show for a small academy show. That wipes that out, right? Wipes it out. So now you have nothing. There's no cash flow. All right. Then what happens is you're going to savings, you're going to credit cards, you're doing all these other things that just continue to snowball and make your situation worse for you. All right. So they have a mortgage, okay, and their mortgage is $289,000. I rounded for you guys. There's change in there, but I rounded. So it's $289,000. Their payment is $1,842. That mortgage is at a 5.25% rate. And I know you guys are thinking, hey, man, that's not a bad rate considering what rates are currently, right? It's sure, you could say that. But when you double that and add a zero, you realize the rates aren't so great because that's what mortgages do to you. So they don't really have 5.25%. Okay, so if we double that, that becomes what, 1150. Then you and no, that becomes 11. If 11.5, and then you add a zero, so now we're at over 100%, right? We don't do this anymore. This is not what you guys are going to do. You're going to learn that mortgages are one of the worst things out there for your finances. At the end of the day, they are. Sorry, guys, they just are. We need them though, right? We want them. We want to have a house. I get it. But we're going to chunk that mortgage down and we're going to get out of it once we're out of these debts. All right. And that's what they're going to do because they were going to do a cash out refi. Okay. And get about $50,000 to handle some of this debt. All right. That's what they were going to do. So if you look at their home, which is at $485,000, it appraised for approximately $485,000 at 80% loan to value. That means that they have $388,000 to work with. Well, you have to subtract off this home equity line though, because they do have a home equity line out there. So they did have room to do this cash out refi. But if they did that, again, what's going to happen? Yeah, they're going to get cash to pay off, these two loans or these two lines of credit here. But what then happens? They reset that clock on their mortgage, don't they? And I'm going to show you exactly what they had spent, okay, in interest, because they've been paying on this house for 6.5 years. I'm going to show you that at the end, and it's going to make you sick because it made me sick. All right. Now, well, it made me sick. Number one, that they paid that much, and number two, that they were going to do a refi and then literally throw it out the window because it's then useless to them, all the money that they've paid. Okay. Now, mortgage $289. We're sitting at a payment of $1,842. The home equity line of credit that they have currently is at $9,860. The payment is $191. They had $35,000 available. Okay, so that's the line limit. All right, it's at 11.25%. It will take 6 years at this payment amount to pay this off if they do continue traditional banking. Okay. And then that means that $3,680 would be the amount they paid back to term that out, okay, to run that for 6 years. American Express, if they leave it sit there, it's at $23,629. $689 would be their payment, or is their payment, I should say. It's at 23%. It would take them 5 years, and they would pay back $15,228 to American Express, okay? They have an Ink card. I believe that's Chase. It's at $32,164. I believe that's a business card. The payment amount is $964. It is at a 24% interest rate. It is for the payback on that would be almost 5 years at $21,368 if you term that out. They have a Slate card at $15,108. It's for $450 monthly payment at 21%, and that is $9,118 over 5 years, okay? And then they have a car, right? They have one car that's paid off. This car they have on a loan. It's sitting at $42,048. I think it was over $50 when they got it originally. It's at $973, 5.25% interest rate. They are going to spend $7,132 to term that out over 5 years. All right. So what does that mean? That means these debts, not including their mortgage debt, just these debts here, okay, are $122,809 is what they're in debt for. Their monthly payments right now, currently, including the mortgage here, though, in this payment is $5,074. All right. And their amount to term these out, if they term these out, it's going to go to they're going to spend $56,526. That's a killer, okay? That's a lot of money for $122,000 in debt. And we're not even talking their mortgage. And when I show you their mortgage and you add it all together, it's astounding, okay? And you're all doing this. We're all doing this, right? Because we don't know any better. Now you do, because we're going to show you, right? So here's what we looked at. What we said with them is, listen, guys, take your $56,186, okay? Now, your comfort level, again, this is your comfort level, but I'm going to tell you what we recommended because this is what we would do, all right? So they ended up agreeing, and they're going to take the $56,186 in savings, and we're essentially going to pay these two cards off, right, with that. And then we're going to have a little bit left over, all right? So we're basically going to take care of all of these except the car, all right? So what we did then is we took the HELOC, the American Express, the Ink card, and the Slate card. That all totals $80,700 or $80,761, all right? And we're going to subtract off their savings, which is $56,186, okay? So that means we have $24,575 left over. So what we decided is we're going to take advantage of as much of that home equity line of credit as possible to help them get out of these debts. So what we did is we said, okay, let's take that up to a $30,000 even, and we're going to start hammering these debts down, okay? So we then are taking it up to $30,000, which means we have to play with another $5,425, which we are then going to slap against that car loan, okay? We're going to try to get rid of that car loan too, but we can't do it immediately. We're going to take this in a couple steps. So our new car payment is going to be, our new car balance is going to be $36,623. Again, the payment remains the same, okay, until they do something different with it. So we are going to run then their home equity. We're going to take care of these debts here, and we are going to start with $30,000 with that home equity because we have paid these two off, okay? The home equity is going to be our debt destroyer. That is the debt weapon that we are using. So we then are going to be taking care of, well, here, let's not ruin a purple marker. We're going to be taking care of this payment. We're going to be taking care of this. We're going to be taking care of this because essentially our savings took care of these two, right? We are taking care of the Slate card because this is going into the home equity line of credit, okay? And so we have then left over the $24,575. Remember, of that, we're going to take $54,25, slap it down against the car so that it's $36,623. So now we're going to be starting with a $30,000 home equity line of credit, and we are going to see how quickly they get out. All right, so give me a second. I'm going to clear the rest of this board, and you're going to see the magic of Velocity Banking. Okay, so I'm back with some calculations on the board for you as far as what these students did, okay? So now, to recap, we had $56,000 in savings, right? So $56,186. We were going to pay off all three of these debts, leaving the car, paying $5,000-ish against the car. So it would be at $36,623, okay? So here's what we did. We ended up paying these off, right? And so we have a balance of $30,000 on our home equity line of credit. You know, it comes up to 30 once we put the $5,425 onto that HELOC, okay, which gives us $5,000 of 𝐲𝐶 money, okay? So there is money there in case of something. Now, I'm okay with leaving $5,000 because their income works this down pretty rapidly, and I'm going to show you that here in a second, okay? So we have $30,000 that we put on this home equity line of credit. We've taken care of a bunch of our debts, right? We have $9,300 in our income. Remember, the income in and all of our expenses out is exactly how we win with Velocity Banking. So now what we have is once we've taken in month one and put our income in, it drops us to $20,700, all right? But our expenses have to come out, and our expenses are $67.53 plus the $237 of interest charges because this home equity line of credit is at 11.25%, right? So it's at 11.25%. So a couple things here. Number one, how do we calculate the interest? Number two, where in the world, Jen, did you get the expenses of $67.53 when you said they were $9,012? All right, so let's look at that. So the $9,012, right? That is what their expenses were. But we subtract off all of these payments, right? Because that is coming back to us since we took care of these loans, right? So the 91, the 689, the 964, and the 415 are now gone, right? We don't have those anymore. So if you subtract them out, that gives us our expenses now, our monthly expenses of $67.53. This car loan is not inside of that because we are still paying on that car, C-A-R, car. Okay, anyway, so we have the $67.53, those are our expenses currently, and now we have interest. Well, how do we calculate the interest? Most of you guys know this, but I'm going to go over it for you, for anyone new out there who doesn't understand how we calculate the charges. And let me get my calculator so I can make some sense to you. All right. So the first thing we have to do is say, okay, we know that the banks charge on an average daily balance, the interest. And since we are making a big chunk deposit of our income into this line of credit, that means our balance is going to drop significantly, which means the average daily balance drops, right? So the most efficient, the easiest way we can do this, and the most accurate, way we can do it, that'll make any sense for us, right, is to average those two numbers, the high number and the low number, okay? So it is an approximation, but it's pretty close. All right, so we take 30,000 and we take, which is our high balance, and we take our 20,700, which is our low balance. So you take 30, okay? And we're going to add the 20,700, which gives us 5,700, so 50,700. And then we're going to divide that by 2, which gives us 350. And then we take the 25,350, and we're going to multiply it by 11.25%, or 0.1125, right? So we're going to multiply it by 0.1125, which gives us 28.51. Now that would be how much we would pay over an entire year if it was left at that balance, okay? That's how much, at that average balance, I should say. That's how much we would pay. So now we have 28.51, and we are then going to take that and we're going to divide it by 12 to give us 237, okay? So 237,000, all right? So that's where we get that from. Now, that means that once these charges come back in, right, once our expenses are paid and our interest is paid, we're at $27,690. We then do this all over again the next month, right? Income in, expenses out, and interest out, or back in, I guess I should say technically. Which then, so when your income comes in, it drops us to $18,390 plus our expenses plus our interest. We're back to $25,359. Now we have to do checks here. We always have to do checks to make sure we're running in the right direction, okay? So if we start with 30,000 and we put our income in and it drops to 20, but then after the expenses and the interest come in, this number here should be lower than what you begin with, and it is. It's at 27,690. So again, this number then should always be higher than what you end up with when you have your expenses and your interest that come back in. And as you can see, it is. Now, so what happens is it has taken us 6 months and we have spent $1,338 in interest, okay, to take care of these debts. But we still have a car loan out there that we want to take care of, okay? And so in this time frame, in this you know what? That's not 6 months. Sorry, guys. That's 9 months. Yeah. Whoops. Typo. Let me find. Here we go. Sorry. Don't want to confuse you. This is 9 months, not 6 months. Okay. So in 9 months worth of time, doesn't matter. It's still a very short period of time, right? Okay. So in 9 months of time, you've spent $1,338 in interest to take care of this. All right. But you still have a car loan out there that you want to take care of. The car loan balance now is because it's been going for 9 months, it's at $31,721, okay? Now, you have to remember that there's interest that you've paid during this 9 months, okay? And that comes to $1,896. Now, notice this is much more than this, right? Because we're velocity banking it, okay? So now we take our new balance, we take our income and we subtract out our income, right? Because this new car balance, we've taken that and we've put it into our home equity line of credit that we paid off. All right. So we now can put the car in. We run our direct deposit comes in. So our income comes in, drops us to the 22,421, add together, divide by 2, multiply by your 0.1125. and that gives us our $253. Our expenses now are $57.80. Well, why are they $57.80 instead of $67.53? Because this car loan here, that's at $973, right? The car loan, $973, that is gone, right? We subtract that out, so that comes back to us again. That comes back to us and reduces our expenses. So we're at $57.80. So you can see we take pretty short work of this, right? So it goes very quickly. So this is done in 7 months, and we have spent $1,120 in interest, okay? So now what do we have? All right, so now what? So now we have spent in total time, the 9 months plus the 7 months, 16 months. The interest between these two together, okay, was $2,458, and the interest that we spent in the car, right, because the car was still running, well, it's running because it's running, but the interest was still being taken out because it was running in that loan. So that was your $1,896. So when you add that together, we have spent $4,354 to take care of all of these debts, aside from the mortgage. And you would have spent $56,526 to run this to term if you were to do it the traditional banking way. This is the power of velocity banking, you guys. This is why we do it, right? This is why we do this, because it is so impactful. Now, let's talk about their interest rate on their mortgage really quick. So, or their mortgage interest. Now, remember, that $56,186 is sitting in their savings account. They were stressed out about it because they want to hang on to that money, because you're told you need 3 to 6 months of money in savings, and they want to hang on to it, right? And I know this because Dan and I did the same thing. We wanted to hang on to our money, and we thought that that was going to make us feel better, right? But the problem is we're in all this debt, and we're paying these high interest rates in the process, right? So do you think they had $56,186 sitting in that bank account? Physically, sure, they did. But let's see what they really had, right? Because remember, in 6.5 years, how much did they pay in mortgage interest in 6.5 years? $95,953. That wiped that savings account right out, didn't it? Totally wiped it out. Here's the problem. When you have a mortgage, and then if they were to then have gone and refinanced it, okay, they would then set that clock right back, okay, and they would have to spend this $95,000 all over again in 6.5 years. Why would you do that? When we can now take chunks off of this home equity loan that we have paid for, or line of credit, sorry, home equity line that we've now paid for, it's sitting at zero, and we can chunk down against that mortgage and wipe it out in half time or less. And that is actually going to be my next video on how quickly these guys are going to get out of that mortgage, okay? So that will be the next video, but let's first see, okay, in 30 years, okay, in 30 years, how much interest total are they going to pay on this mortgage? Now, it started at, I think, $315, I think is where it started. They're down to $289. But let's see. So over the course of 30 years, they are going to spend another house in interest. They are going to spend $315,644. That is literally, they doubled it, right? So they started off with a $315,000 mortgage, and they're going to spend just that much in interest. So you have now, you're going to buy your house you're going to buy. You're also going to buy the bank a house. Don't do this. This is what we're going to learn in my next video. You may see Dan before that, but that's what we're going to cover, and we're going to show you how quickly you can get out of that and save yourself money. Had they done the cash out refi, you guys, they would have spent this all, they would have added $95,000 in interest right onto that refi, because that's what they've already spent. So I don't want to see you do that. I want to see you be smart about your money, and I know you are, and I know you guys are going to learn velocity banking now, especially after seeing how impactful this is. And again, does it matter where you sit? Does it matter if you sit at, $9,300 in income or $2,200 in income? It matters not, you guys, because we all feel the same way. Dan and I felt the same way. We don't now. You guys aren't going to shortly. Learn velocity banking. Watch the videos we have for you. I know you guys can do it, but if you feel like you need help, you can always contact us, info@paydowndebtsolutions.com, if you need a little bit of help, or if you just want our worksheets. I'd be happy to send them out to you too. And those worksheets to get you organized, remember the 3 The 3 steps to our system: organize, identify, and implement. Organize, get all your bills together, organize your debts. Identify your debt weapon, your debt destroyer, and then you're going to implement your plan. This is a plan. This is what Dan and I do every single day. This is what you can do. It's not hard. It is not difficult. We show you how. Have an awesome day. Happy Easter, and I'll see you in the next video.